Okay, so just like the book, this is going to be just about the fundamentals of Photoshop, and is not going to be a definitive tutorial on how to use Photoshop. There's a lot of videos in this book that show you how I use Photoshop. What I wanted to do was just take a minute to show you the way that I have Photoshop set up with my tool palettes, talk about some of the different techniques that I find most helpful, so like a little tips and tricks tutorial, and also for those people that are new to Photoshop, to just show you what the program can do, to show you what your options are for digital rendering in addition to traditional media rendering. So this is Photoshop. This happens to be CS6 that I'm working in. Over here you'll see I've got my tool presets. This I find is the #1 time saver for the way I work. So you have whatever selected, whatever my normal erasers, brushes, and all I have to do is touch them once, and you'll see like it go from a 100% airbrush set up here to 100% opacity, go to a 50, technically a 51, and then you can have it save out all your settings. You even have things like color shifting brushes set to color mode here. That allows you to colorize something. I've got color dodge brushes, all sorts of brushes in here. Smudge brushes. So if I was to take and smudge that, you can start to see what it does. So tool presets, #1 time saver I find, and there are some fundamental sort of basic tools that I've shared with you in the download content link on the links list on page 270. So go ahead and pull those off of there, off our server, and then if you want to add them, what you do is you just go load tool presets, and it would find a list, and you would then load them in. You can also replace tool presets, save out custom ones, and you can reset back to the default Photoshop presets. So I would start by just loading, adding to what you already have, or if you've never used them before, just replace with my presets, and then modify the list. When you want to modify the list, what you do is you just go to the preset manager, and here's all the tools. And if you find that there's one that you're not using at all, like say you don't use the eraser chiseled, just delete it. You can also change the order in here, so you can pull brushes around. Let's say I want the B liner to be below, just reorder it and then say done, and you'll have your new updated list here. Okay, this is I usually don't have swatches open. My brushes are there, and so I can select out of those as needed, and then there's the brush tip modifiers, which are here, and those usually sit a little bit more out here in the middle, like so. And don't try to paint or render while you have this window open, because it takes up a lot of energy, a lot of processing power on your computer, and it will slow you down. So pick your brushes, collapse it. So this is another way to save out different brushes in addition to tool presets. So what I do is I take the brushes, make them first, which I also have a video on that on my YouTube channel, and then save them to here. And then the ones I keep using over and over again, I ultimately save to here. So let's say I had this brush, right? I really liked it and I was using it all the time. I would just go here and say new tool preset, give it a name, right? And then I don't include the color. Usually that will include whatever your swatch color is, and if I'm always wanting to paint with different colors and values, so I don't include the color. And then you just hit OK, and there it is, the bottom of my preset list for my tools. I think also if you hold down the Option key, Option Alt on a PC, and click, you get those little scissors, and you can also just delete it right from that list. So I find that's very helpful. and saves a lot of time. So that's a good one to do, is get in the habit of using tool presets, making your brushes. You can also save out and modify these with the same way, meaning the preset manager. You can modify, slide them, pull them around, change the order, all that good stuff. You can delete them, etc. Give them different names. When you're done, just hit update, and that's it, and then just collapse it back. Probably the biggest thing about working digitally that's a great time saver is the fact you have layers. So this is a scanned pen drawing, and I just colorized it a little bit. So it starts out normal like this, just like it's a scanned white piece of paper. And then up here you have a couple buttons, which I'll talk about in a minute, to show you the ones that I use all the time. So if I wanted to change the background on this, for instance, and still have my line drawing show up, you could select off the white all around it, but you need a nice, clean, concise edge for that to make a good selection. Otherwise, you could just put it on multiply, and everything that's white will disappear. Here, let's do it this way. Let's have it on normal first. Let's turn on a little background layer. I have a little light brown, like weathered yellowish paper there. And when I switch from normal to multiply, everything that's white becomes transparent. Now it looks like my line drawing is done on this old weathered paper, which is helpful. And then I have more layers here, so there's a little background layer also set to multiply, so it's just darkening the text, so I didn't lose the texture. You'll see if I go to normal and turn up the opacity, it starts to actually cover. Let's put it on top. There, it's covering over that texture, and if I put it on multiply, the texture will come back and it'll just be darker. And because it's on an independent layer, I can adjust its opacity, in effect changing its strength, which is very helpful as well. And you'll see that this has just built up a series of layers, another multiply layer, because I'm keeping the texture of my line drawing. But again, each time I think about making a design change, or I want a different layer mode, like multiply for instance, or normal or darken, the best way to learn about these is to just experiment. And I would say to really learn the program efficiently, if you like what you see here that I'm able to do in this program, go to someplace like the Gnomon Workshop or lynda.com and go watch, an extensive Photoshop introduction video or tutorial that's going to set you up, to use it and learn as much as you can about the program. I'm just trying to share with you my favorite things and how I have my workspace set up, and also just to demonstrate and show what it can do. All right, so there's a color mode, so I've colorized everything below, so I'm going very cool on my shadows and then using the warmth of the paper for the lit surfaces. There's a little detail there. You can also use layer masks. So layer masks are this button down here at the bottom right, and it's actually towards the left of this menu, but it's in the bottom right of my big screen. And if you want to turn it on and off, you can just use the shift key to toggle on and off. If it has a big red X, that means it's off. Let me show you. I'll turn back on a couple more of these. I'm going to find a good one. This mode is set to color dodge, so it's like my turning on the lights. I'm color dodging all the layers below. Turning on all of these and see if there's a good one. Levels adjustment, that's an adjustment layer. Let's turn it off, back on. So you can see I'm just adjusting the contrast through a certain part of my screen. All right, I wanted to show this button right here. Let's take, I want to try and find this wheel ring right here. Okay, let's just take that. And I'm going to right click that. Oh, you can also get that guy showing up. I tend not to use that wheel much. I tend to use the buttons on my mouse more. Let's apply the layer mask. Okay, all I wanted was this wheel ring. Now, when I have made a shape, in this case a stripe, and I want the edges to stay sharp, there's a couple ways you can do it. The way that I like to do it the most, let's say if I want to make that red, and I paint over the top now, right, I can paint everywhere. If I turn on this button right up here, lock, that's called lock, that's preserve transparency. What it does is it preserves all the pixels that are there and preserves their transparency on that layer. So now when I make this and I paint over red, okay, you see it keeps the silhouette. So it retains the shape and the opacity. So it's kind of like a instant layer mask, and it doesn't allow me to paint where I don't already have pixels. So that's pretty helpful once you've made your shapes and your edges, and you'll see those techniques throughout a lot of the videos. But anyway, I really love Photoshop for rendering. It's my go-to tool, I think, for color rendering. I tend not to draw very much in this program. The fluidity of the drawing tools are not really that great. I think it's, it is what it is when it says it's Photoshop, so it's about making images, manipulating images, and you can use it for quite a few really very painterly effects, great image composing, lots of great layer modes where you can blend in different ways, like multiply layer, colorize layer, things like that. And it's pretty great for rendering and very fluid, but it does help to set up your workspace and work with layers. Learn the fundamentals of the program before you just jump in and try to do an awesome painting where all you do is get frustrated. You will get frustrated if you don't go and get some of the basics, much like this book is hopefully providing to you on the basics of light, shadow, and reflectivity. Same thing goes with Photoshop. Anytime you learn a new tool, try to master some basics first and then start to get creative with it. So I think that does it for this. I just wanted to share with you a quick overview of what the program looks like, how I like to have it set up. Using my tool presets, my custom brushes, which are also, I have a set of custom brushes for you. You can go and do the same thing as the tool presets. You can load them, you can replace them, you can reset to the default Photoshop brushes whenever you like. So that's those tool presets, layering, and that's really about it. And that's how I use Photoshop. And I hope that gets you inspired to go and try digital rendering. It's pretty efficient. It's significantly easier than traditional media rendering because you have this awesome thing called Command Z. And Command Z lets you instantly undo the mistake you just made. Whereas if you're working with a big Sharpie or a big black marker or something on a piece of regular paper, there's no undo. So the flip side is working that way with traditional media makes you think ahead further. When you're working digitally, there's a little more freedom because you can always just undo it. So there's maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to experiment, I think. It also can suck the time a little just because you can experiment and you don't really have to think before you commit to making a mark. So it's good and evil at the same time. So I hope that helps, and enjoy digital rendering.